So for today's podcast, we're going to be talking with Scott Beardslee. Scott is a licensed architect with over 25 years of experience spanning New York City and Texas, and he brings a really different perspective to the show. Scott is the principal of Beardslee Waits Architects, a full-service design firm here in Austin. Before launching his own firm, Scott was managing principal and then director of emerging markets at Pfluger Architects, an Austin-based firm with over $1 billion in educational facility projects. He led the Austin office and managed a team of 50 plus people. What makes Scott especially relevant for this discussion is that he's a traditional professional who's actively integrating AI and technology into his workflow. He's not a tech guy. He's a practicing architect who sees AI as a tool to solve real business problems. We're going to talk with him about the ROI of AI in construction. That's kind of a mouthful. What it's like going from $1 billion firm to launching your own firm, and most importantly, his take on how AI might affect architecture firms going forward. To start out, why don't you kind of give me kind of your history, just for this, I have it on paper, but, kind of give it to me on video, what you've done, and don't hesitate, don't hold back, don't.
Yeah. So I started, I don't want to go back to when I was a young man, but I always just give a minute or so on my father, because I think it's important for who I was. Is he was grew up poor guy, right? Meaning didn't have a home at times during his life when he were kids. And he and his brothers still won't talk about that, right? But he was a brilliant math student. When he was in 8th grade, he was testing off the charts, beyond the highest percentile. And so he started getting scholarships all over the country, right, for some of the best schools. But he didn't grow up in a world where that was something how he could even act on, right? So he ended up becoming a contractor, right? And he wanted to be an architect. So I think that was always in the background. But he's that guy that when he'd work on woodworking projects, he'd have, calculus up on the board, how he was figuring things out. And when I was in college, I remember taking an advanced calc class, and he could still come in and do that stuff like it was yesterday. It just didn't even faze him. But he had so that kind of guided my thinking. He had an artistic spirit, a wandering spirit. He was also a pretty brilliant guy when it came to technical stuff. So I started as a fine arts student of all things, like painting and stuff, right? And at some point during my college career, which started in Wisconsin, I realized I needed something else. It didn't appeal to me, right? Just that path didn't have an answer for me, right? And so I switched to architecture. The story's not important, but I just kind of found my way there. And in that time, since I've been in the professional field, I've worked around the country. I had my own practice in New York. I started with a friend of mine from UT. I went to UT for graduate school, and had that same thing here. I've also worked for big international firms in Chicago, in Texas and Austin. And so I've had all those experiences. And for me, I think I've always been that person that's afraid that I'm going to miss something, or not that I want to go out to a party because people will be there, but big picture, right? If you have an idea or something that interests you, and I become very committed to that idea, I can't let it go, right? And early on in my architectural profession, I realized that the rest of the world was getting swarmed by software, right? And it was a hive of change everywhere. And in the professions, that wasn't happening. Right. And I think a lot of it's because it relied on people rather than software. Right. We used software, but I had friends for years who would say, the only reason you guys are still standing is the software is not smart enough yet. Right. It's a gigantic market. It's coming. Right. And it's here. Right. And so for years, I always thought I wanted to be part of a solution rather than a dying profession, because this is not a popular view. But I think architecture, as we know it, is a dying profession. Right. And
is it really? Why do you think that? Why do you think that? I'm just curious.
So if you go out into the world and you buy an iPhone, right, you have Apple to put it together for you, make sure it's perfect before you buy it, right? In architecture, engineering, and construction, imagine if you had to go buy all the pieces yourself and then put together a team of somewhat qualified people, but there might be someone on the team who's not super qualified, and you need to put the phone together, figure out how to get it live and use it, right? That's architecture. And construction, it's littered with mistakes. And we accept that because we say, oh, it's just how it is, right? This is real complicated stuff building. And there's some truth to it, for sure. But what happens is when technology does come along that might change that, our industry, for example, will always brush back, right? Like just no, this is that you need people, you need the artists to do this. So, for example, there's a company called Icon, which is doing major change across the whole thing. They're a 3D printing construction company, heavily funded, Silicon Valley funded company.
You talking about printed houses and that sort of stuff?
No, NASA. They're doing stuff.
Okay.
I mean, they're doing giant stuff. They did military contracts. I think they have $500 million in VC backing at this point, and that's happened in like a 4 or 5 year period of time. They've exploded. They have contracts with NASA to do Mars and Moon stuff, and I mean they're pretty big, right? They're doing houses like neighborhoods, but they have the backing of some of the top architecture firms on the planet. Design,
but don't they still need an architect?
Well, so here's the thing: if you've been watching the attack on the professions, and I'm not going to take a position on this, I'll call myself neutral, right? But the current administration is listing current professions that may no longer be considered a profession, right? And when that happens, then licensing and all that, maybe probably soon after, you don't even need a license, right? And right now, I can have Gemini crank out.
So you're telling me, Scott, that your take, and I'm just going to confront you a little bit on this. Your take is that Trump's people think architects don't need a degree that or some sort of certification. You're telling me that I'm going to like go drive on a bridge, or I'm going to go live in a building, a skyscraper that was built by somebody who literally could have no degree at all. You're telling me that's the way you think things are going. That's the trend.
Well,
because I'm going to call bullshit on that. I am. I'm just saying.
So here's what I would say. And I totally get it. Join the club with everybody else, right? So when Icon was getting funded, I was at a dinner with a contractor. This back when I was in an executive role for a larger firm, and I brought it up. Said, "How do you guys feel about that?" And they all poo-pooed it. Right? That's just hogwash. As that company is gathering contracts and doing a great job, right, and growing. So my take on it is this: I can go to Gemini right now, and I could be working on a project, and I don't do this because I can't do this, but if I want to confirm, I could ask it to run calculations on loads and shit for beams. Sorry for my language. On beams and girders and joists. And it would get it accurate. And I could have my engineer then take a look at it, do a review, and everything I need.
Yeah, but again, you need to understand. I mean, like, so like just to kind of like calibrate this, there's a question that these researchers asked all the AI engines, okay, and I think only Claude got it right 2 times out of hundreds. They asked it hundreds of times, okay, and the question is this, okay. And don't get me wrong, they tested humans too, and like a percentage of humans didn't get it right either. Okay. They're like, if you need to wash your car, okay, and the car wash is 50 meters away, is it better to walk or drive? Okay. And none of the AIs got that question right. The answer, just to like, kind of give you the answer is you're going to wash your car. You have to drive a car. You have to drive your car to the car wash. Walking is not an option. You get to the car wash, you'd be like, oh, wait, I don't have a car. I'm an idiot. And you would turn around and go back and get your car. So, but none of the AIs got that answer.
That's right.
None of them. Some of them were like, well, if you look at the carbon cost of starting the car and the distance, you should walk. Like the bulk of them were like, you should walk. Like 95% of them were like, it's only 150 feet. You should walk. Don't take your car. Okay. So that's how stupid they are about things that are just basic common sense. So I don't believe that you could put stuff into Gemini and build a building. I don't. I build software with AI all day long. And trust me. You can't today. Again, okay.
So Icon.
You say soon, man. But like,
check this. So where it's going to start is with design, right? Because the first thing you go to an architect for is not, hey, I mean, sure, you need them to sign and seal documents so you can legally build something, of course, right? And that could change a little bit in the future. I don't think it means, so to be clear, I'm not saying architecture goes away, architects go away and they're a vanished thing, right? They don't exist anymore. I'm saying that the way an architect works, the size of the number of people in the industry, how businesses are built, I think it's going towards companies like Icon. So Icon you'll hire them. They're like Apple, and you'll say, I want to do a high-rise building, right? And they're getting robotics involved now so they can do everything. And they have everything in-house. They'll have their AI, there's architects that are part of their team that will take care of the design up front.
Well, what you're talking about is whether they have a firm, whether it's a firm that does a lot of the construction and kind of downstream, and is like a vertically integrated firm versus a standalone architect.
But it won't require as much staff, right? And so what I'm getting at is it'll go to you and I have talked about this like swarm mentality with AI, where kind of like the new Raptor jet the military has. One guy in a jet can control 4 jets. Those 4 jets control 27 drones each, right? And you have a whole swarm with one person controlling it. I think it'll go towards something like that with very few people. And I say that because so Icon, when they came out, which was a big deal, I think, for a lot of people, was they had a software package called Vitruvius. And their beta would design a home for you. You could just input stuff and say, hey, I want a 100 square foot home, 1 story. I like mid-century modern, or I want it to look like the Pope's house in 1200, whatever it is. And it will crank this stuff out. And so I came from a design background, right? Fine arts guy. I'm not a technical architect, but I'm good at that stuff, I think. But I lean more towards the design. I was blown away with their beta. I mean, to me, someone who was, our firm in New York was a design firm working for wealthy people doing Hampton homes, right? So I love that stuff. I was blown away. I mean, when I saw it, I thought, we're done. Like, that's their beta. Their beta did better than 96% of the architects I know from a design standpoint. So the second you can prove that you can do that, now, like, and people talk about the art, hey, you still need this human soul to have it mean something. In my experience in the field, I don't know if that's the case. I think there's the very high percent. It's almost like art. There's the 0.1% that can go out and buy, a current, artist, or buy a Basquiat painting, and they can have that and appreciate it. Most people just go to what's at Target, and it's a cottage scene that they hang on the wall, right? So there's going to be people that will say, I want that human being who works for this company, who's the artist, because I want their stamp on my home. That's about, or my building. That's about 0.1% of projects.
But to me, a house is way more complicated than a PowerPoint, right? I mean, that's not debatable. A house is, you have to live in it, blah, blah, right? Yeah. I've used all of the cutting edge apps, and they can't put the text inside a box in a PowerPoint. How are they supposed to fit a toilet inside a bathroom and a shower if they can't figure out that the text isn't supposed to go outside the boundary, and the text literally like runs off the edge of the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
You're telling me that's going to build a house? I got to be honest, man.
Yeah.
I know there's betas that show that stuff, but I just don't think it's there. I think all this stuff is going to be
not there, and that's why I said I said not yet. Right?
But is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
I mean, so technology is not my background. I'm fascinated, and I try to be as educated as I can, but it's not where I was educated. So it's hard for me to, if you ask me how long it's going to take to do this building and how many months will it take, I can put together a schedule and be pretty spot on. But if you say, what's it going to, how many, I don't know. And I think it'll come down to that energy thing we're facing, right? Like, how fast can AI advance based on the demand, and how fast can it learn if we don't even have enough energy to keep up with the data centers that would process everything? That's the stuff I can't answer. I mean, I have no idea how to give you an answer on that. But to me, just based on how fast it's come in the last 5 years, and it's on that hockey stick growth chart, like I'm seeing now, it's almost like every month you're like, holy crap, like that's a huge improvement, right?
No, it does amazing things. I mean, 2 to 5 years,
I bet you're in a point where architects are, and there are firms out there that are smart. And I say smart like that suggests I'm smart, my idea is right. I don't mean that, but meaning they're for future thinkers, right? I think the second you stop looking to the future, you're done, right? As a company, you got to look out, right? And I think the smart firms, and I have friends for big firms, international firms like Big, that they're the company, they're from Amsterdam, and they've won Pritzker prizes. They're very well known, and they're the ones that partnered with Icon. So they're one of the most well-respected design firms on the planet, and they jumped in 100% into this and invested into Icon, right? And to become kind of the brains behind their design engine. So we'll see, but if you put a gun to my head and say, you got to pick a fork in the road, which one is it going to be? There's no way I'm picking 2 decades or 15 years from now, architects are still doing the same thing. To me, I'd be like, I might as well shoot myself right now. There's no way.
No, I don't doubt that the job is going to change. I mean, in the last 3 years, I've seen the job of software developer go from, writing coding and cutting and pasting code, and like viewing stuff on Stack Overflow and asking, searching problems on Google, to handing it to an AI and going, now write that software. That being said, there's an awful lot of stuff that comes back out of that that's just tripe. It's just garbage. I agree. It's literally unusable. And it takes a human being to go, yeah, that's not going to work. right? And there's times where it'll do something where it's like, well, I just deleted the user model. It's like, oh, you just deleted users? Like that's how you solved the problem, was getting rid of the user. Like, wait a second, stop, back up, roll that back. Let's talk about why users are important in our software application. Like, it's like, it kind of like doesn't, like, sometimes it just gets stupid to the point where it's difficult to describe how stupid it actually is. It's like, at some points it's coding as well as somebody with a master's degree. And it's like, wow, that's the best software I've seen, or that's really great. Or maybe even that's entry level programmer level coding, but it's in some language, right? But then sometimes it's like, wow, you don't even understand that you have to drive your car to the car wash.
Agreed. Yeah, you know, an interesting example of that is I've joked with you in the past about the bunker thing, right? I've always been fascinated with people who build underground. It just fascinates me. Maybe I'm an architect, or would it because of my background? I have no idea. But I have a friend who's wants to do a project like this, right? And kind of storm shelter, he'll call it. To me, it's apocalypse bunker, right? Batteries, the whole 9 yards. And so I started trying to learn as much as I could to help him. And what amazed me, and I was using Gemini, was the way that you could use Gemini to process data. Like, it could calculate, these are the supplies you need, and it'll take up this much space, and do stuff that you would spend weeks working on, and you could get it to perfect in like an hour or two. And I was blown away. And of course, it tracks your conversation as long as you don't drop that window, so you can go on for days. And it's kind of like, oh, remember 3 days ago when we talked about this? You should. But then it would say stuff like, for energy, you should do a true geothermal well, right? We're talking like drill a mile down and get into like the true geothermal. It's like, no, you're not going to do that, because that's would cost more than the entire project put together by a factor of 3. And it just didn't make that jump, right? And then you had to say like, no, you can't do that, because this would be you'd tell it like, how expensive would it be to do that? And it can get that. It can come back and say, well, it would cost $5 million. You're like, all right, well, that's more than 3 times more than the whole project. Like, you're not going to do that.
But it can't answer the question of, would you want to live in a post-apocalyptic world at all?
No, it can't answer that, right? It can't.
Right. Like, oh, and by the way, the people who survive a post-apocalyptic world aren't people you necessarily want to share the world with. Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, it's like what does Einstein say? He said, I have no idea what weapons we'll use in World War III, but I know in World War IV it'll be sticks and stones, right? I believe with that. It's kind of like whatever's left, you're going to be throwing rocks at each other. There's not going to be much there.
Yeah. Also, like, what do you do in 5 years when your antibiotics expire? Like, what do you do when you can't get insulin or even aspirin? Like, that stuff has an expiration date for a reason. It stops working after a while.
Yeah. Anybody who has needs for medical needs. Yeah. I mean, you're
done. But even surgery, you can't have surgery. Okay. You can't have surgery. You break your leg. And so they're like, oh, it's pretty serious. We're going to go in and fix it.
Well, and that goes to, so like Elon Musk, when he's talking about Optimus, right? And I'm fascinated. I want one, right? When it gets to that point. And when he says, oh, in 2-3 years, he always exaggerates. Of course, he's always very ambitious, but he's usually kind of close, at least in the idea. Says, oh, Optimus will be able to perform surgery better than any surgeon in the world. I don't know if that's 2 years, but I believe that's in my lifetime for sure. That the robots will be able, maybe, I don't know. Again, so to me, it's like that, in that scenario, you just need to make sure you have one of those robots.
Let me ask you a question. Would you get on an airplane that had no pilot? Today, right
after
now,
it's been proven, like, I would want to be the beta tester.
Okay, it is. Yeah, the airplane in an autopilot situation right now in 2026 takes the plane off, flies the plane, and lands the plane.
Yeah, I think
the pilot is completely unnecessary. The co-pilot is 100% unnecessary. We're not even debating whether the co-pilot is unnecessary. 2 pilots is completely ridiculous. The airplane's doing all the work, okay, except in the case of something going wrong. And then you have to land it in the river like that dude. Okay. And then you go, wow, I really want a pilot with 40 years of experience that understands everything and has been through every single simulation, all that. So would I trust a computer? Would I walk into a booth and press a button and have the computer like do cataract surgery? No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Would I want an experienced optometrist there watching the machine doing it, ready to press the stop button if necessary? Yes. That I would trust. Yeah. But again, they better. So again, I feel the same way about architects, right? Anything I'm betting my life on, man, it's really hard to take that human out of the loop, right?
And I agree. I think you're always going to have it. It's like my youngest daughter wants to get a law degree, right? And I'm seeing that, law firms are the statistics that they're hiring fewer, people out of school because the AI is helping with simple things. It's smarter, or some of the stuff they're doing. But I'm not going to say to her, oh my God, you should not do this. You're not going to have an opportunity. Even if she said architecture, I probably wouldn't say much other than, all right, let's see what happens, right? Because there will be people. I don't think a career vanishes and everything goes away. I just think architects picture a world where it's not much different than what it is now, like even 10 years out, right? And the thing about it is do you really need staff that is very inefficient? That's the truth. Working over and over on design ideas. That's what chews up your time. Is I tell people when we get hired for stuff, if you need a lot of design, if you really, what you're going for is something that's gonna be beautiful and win awards or whatever, that's the most money right there. Right, is all that time. And if you have software like Vitruvius that can do that, I mean, even some of the dumb stuff that we use in our firm just to kind of like work through ideas, you can in like an hour, like work through things that might have taken you days before, just seeing tons of options and saying, oh yeah, that has merit. I'm going to pull that forward and work on it. And that, I imagine, will just become more and more prevalent. And then the idea is you will have those leaders, the design leaders, the face of the firm, the people that run that interface with the other human beings, right? But if you told me, hey, you can use this machine and it's going to get you what you need much quicker and more efficient, I'm not necessarily thinking about money. I'm just thinking about how I can serve the client, how quickly I can work through solutions. And I'm like, that's appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think from a software standpoint, what I'm seeing is, you have these agents that can run overnight. Okay, they can go pull tickets and say fix bugs, and they can sort of run overnight. And sometimes they'll go 100 miles in the wrong direction. Okay, and you got to reel it in and go, yeah, that's all garbage. That's not the right solution. Right. So sometimes I think there's a process where the computer, you could say, okay, here's, along this route, I want you to do X, Y, Z. Like Matt, our video guy, was talking about how 5 years ago, you used to have to type captions in by hand. You have to actually type and spell all the words if you're going to do a caption video for closed captioning. Okay. He goes, now you press a button, you pick your font. Like it does it automatically. He goes, that's great. That's amazing technology because he goes, I don't have to do that anymore. And that was painful and time consuming, right? The thing is, that's entry level work.
Yep.
I think this is where I think there's this sort of gap. And so Scott, this is my theory. I did a video on this yesterday, but like my theory is what we think intelligence, right, is the thing that this thing is doing, and what we're doing is intelligent, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, a lot of what people do, especially experienced senior people, really involves wisdom. It's not intelligence, it's experience.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? You're like, no, that's not going to work. And I'll tell you why that's not going to work. You don't want a corner here or a corner there because people are going to bump into each other. Like a machine doesn't know that.
Agreed.
The machine doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And so the way that I've likened it is the machine knows the price of everything and the value of nothing.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it.
Okay. Or the movie that I've quoted yesterday, which is Bull Durham, which is you got $1 million arm and a 10-cent head.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then the question is, how long does it take for that 10-cent head to catch up? And the people I've talked to, they're way smarter than I am regarding this stuff. They all kind of go back to the amount of computation sustained over time to get it to that point. They're the people. And what you mentioned, going to Clubhouse or some of these podcasts, and you get to learn more about what's happening with Gemini or Anthropic, and should you use that as your engine you build on, or are they going to just take your information, all that kind of stuff. And to me, I'm kind of settled into this point. For example, so the company I'm involved with that does technology.
And back up, what was just to put on tape what we talked about, because I think that's an important point. The thing that we were talking about was, do you want to build a system and give Gemini all of your information?
Why are you paying this company $10,000 a month? Gemini can do it for $10.
Yeah, or worse. Like you teach Gemini how your business works. You teach it all your secret sauce. Imagine you have a restaurant and you have all these secret recipes.
So here's an example of where that could be a big deal, and where it is a deal for us now. And it's a stumbling point for us because we have access to markets that fascinate me because they're not typical markets, meaning South America. Yes, of course, that's a typical market, but you just have a company here that starts here. It's unlikely they're saying, hey, we're making our money in Rio or Cali,
Right.
Colombia right now, or Mexico City. They're
Right.
probably saying, I'm making it in San Francisco or Detroit or New York. And that field, I love that. Like, when I've traveled down there, there's of course businesses that are consistent across every hemisphere, every continent. But then you'll go down there and who's delivering the food to your door and how they're doing it and all these other things. They're different companies. They're backed by VCs in the United States often, but they're different companies. So we were fascinated by that. But here's the thing, that product was started by a friend of mine who got her MBA at MIT, had friends there. They started this thing, and it's an agentic commerce piece. It's a bot that would go in and work with wholesale construction suppliers, selling supplies to subcontractors for construction. It's a gigantic market, one of the biggest markets probably in the world. And right now, they spend an enormous amount of time processing stuff that's sent to them to put together orders. Sometimes it comes in a PDF. Sometimes it comes in an email, just written in an email. Sometimes it's dirty data. It's just someone writing by hand and sending it, right? And it hunts that stuff down and goes and finds everything, and it helps identify other choices. It's about 90% accurate right now, which is pretty impressive if you ask me, based on how much data, especially the dirty data, right? The handwriting and stuff. So we get that to work. It's in Portuguese. Right? It's in the metric system in Portuguese, and in that culture, everything is built that way. I can't take that to the United States right now and say, hey, check out this thing we have. We have clients there and we're growing. We're getting more clients that are interested. So it's starting to move. But when we say, let's look at America, we go here and we have to change it to English and Imperial and make sure that it's working in a different system. That's not easy as you would think, especially when you're dealing with dirty data. And then here's one more step. So you go to Mexico. We have an office in Mexico City, architecture office, and one of my business partners has connections in that industry, said we should try to do it here. So we say, let's get this to do Spanish as well. Why not, right? We have connections. And then you run into, it's even more complicated. And so it's even more complicated. It's going to sound, it's true. Like you'll in Mexico, the people will send stuff that's in English and Spanish. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, people joke with Spanish. There's actually, and I know this, I've worked in Monterey and Mexico City on projects. There's a mixed thing there, especially when you have English speaking and Spanish speaking people doing business together.
Half English, half Spanish. Right?
Yeah, like weird, like they might notate a quantity and then over here it's like, so when you have a machine trying to read that, it's like, what in the hell? So the tied into that, a good friend of mine who I recruited at my last job, and he went out and started his own company. It's called dwellci.ai, and it's what we're talking about, design-based software platform. You should talk to him. He's really interesting. And what they're doing is it's feasibility for developers and other things. And there's like one other company that does it. I don't think that other company is very good, to be honest with you. These guys are pretty good, but it'll like determine what you can build and reads code and everything, right? That works in the United States because we are data rich when it comes to that kind of stuff. You can go to jurisdictions and pull up all the stuff. We talked about Mexico because I'm like, hey man, I could help you in that market. Like, I think we know developers there. And he said they looked outside the US, and because they have connections in Central and South America, and for them to hunt down the data they need to be successful, he said it's just not there. And he specifically mentioned in Mexico that it's so choppy. Like, how do you get what a jurisdiction will approve when you can go to the local governor and get him to sign a piece of paper so you can build your mansion on a national park? I'm being serious, right? So it's like, how do you even account for that? So in that standpoint, these bots and these agentic pieces and stuff that folks are putting together are unbelievably limited by the 10-cent brain because they can't sift through that. They don't know how to, like, they're just like, I don't know. I don't get it.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me.
So it's made our growth unbelievably challenging because, like, you know, when I got involved, it was, hey, let's open up the American market, North American market. Let's go after this stuff. And then you get into what does it cost and the time it takes to change this product. And I guess people have done it for years. Every software platform had to do it. I don't know.
Sure. Internationalized. Yeah. So back up really quickly and tell me about what do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about what you're trying to do? Like the problem you're trying to solve? I think the big thing that I think I want to kind of talk about here, kind of what I want to use this platform to talk about, is people who are solving real world problems with various AI solutions, whether that's a big model or their own thing or, you know, new company or a product they're using, you know, to really go into here's how you implement this on the ground. Right. And that's why I think it's super interesting about what you're trying to do. Why don't you take a zoom out and kind of back up and give us the view of that?
So generally speaking, when I went back to that idea that I made the comment that there's a lot of mistakes, you're building the phone yourself, and it's kind of true, right? So you're going to have a lot more mistakes. In architecture, engineering, and construction, right? So it's always say when you hear AEC, that's what they're talking about, like what it takes to build buildings. And I believe the most recent number I saw that was reliable was up to 20% of mistakes, right, on a set of documents that goes out. And this is not dumb people. This is just, I mean, smart people. But when you look at how projects are coordinated and how we do things, it's overly complicated, right? And it's not very, if you ask me, it's not real sharp. Like you read Andy Grove's book, High Output Management or whatever it is, right? It's a brilliant book. And you like said, hey, let's take this to an architecture firm and see how they run things, or engineers are better. It's really, I would say it doesn't surprise me that you have upwards of 20% mistakes. So the cost to the industry and those mistakes is huge, right? Just you can do the math. I mean, if it's a multi-trillion dollar industry and you start saying, oh, every time there's a mistake, there's a cost, right? And it might not be a gigantic cost. It might be only a couple percent of that part of the project, but over the course of a whole country's worth of construction. The one thing that's consistent with construction projects is change orders and additional services and supplementary services and stuff related to mistakes and things that were missed, right? And so that's a bigger picture thing, and we have an interest in that, right? Like eventually being part of that solution. But at the front end, you have contractors ordering, oh, I don't know, it's $3 trillion a year in construction materials in North America. I believe that's the number. And then you apply like in the mistakes made in the ordering of materials. So when someone's putting together an order form, they're going in and they're having to put together, it could be 10 pages, the kind of thing nobody wants to look at, right? It is where it's like quantity, 87, right? Serial number, product, you know what I mean? Like it's a sea of that stuff. And then they have to go through and figure out like, okay, did we get everything here? And you would think, well, yeah, that's grueling, but that's their job. It's mind numbing work. And the best salespeople, what we found, the people that have that real ability to go sell, their brains don't work like that, right? They're usually not the people that can just sit and stare at a document for 3 hours. Yeah. And look at that's me. If you made me do that, I'm like, forget it. Just get rid of that client and they're done. Cause I'm never going to be able to get this right. Like my brain can't do that. Right. So it's a really automatically, it's like set up for a certain amount of failure. And they also have, so then when you dig into the wholesalers, the construction supply wholesalers, and you wonder, well, how much do they return materials? And you say, why would you return? Because if you're a roofer or whatever it is, and you have a box of nails, you just keep them for the next job, right? Well, that doesn't really work that way for them, because now that's connected to the money on another job, right? And now they're taking that, they have to store it somewhere. Usually what they'll do is just return it, right? And return the materials and then clean that job up and go fresh on a new one. And those returns can be as much as like 15, 20% of the stuff they order, right? That was either wrong or something happened and they didn't need it. And so that's one of the problems, is getting rid of that waste and that loss that happens. I mean, we're in this world now where every time I turn on something on Congress, we're hearing about what happened to $9 trillion, what happened to this, what happened to that, and why are people can't eat on the streets. And I'm not saying like I'm a noble patron of I'm trying to help people, because people lose their jobs with this stuff. But I hate waste. To me, like when I see things where I'm like, my God, money is just falling through the cracks everywhere, it drives me crazy. So that's one thing. And then bigger picture, my interest is really more on the getting past the ordering materials and how do we do jobs. And that's also a very wasteful process that is inherently filled with mistakes and politics and all kinds of other stuff. And that's where we eventually want to end up, I would say, is and that, when you're asking like, hey, your vision for where this would go, is if the machines get smart enough, the models can get smart enough, we have the energy to feed them, you should be able to read a set of documents. That's the goal, is that someone could send you a set of drawings with specifications. The drawings could be 150 pages, specs could be like 4 books that are like 300 pages, right? And it would be able to process all that information and give you an order form and say, based on our reading of these documents, this is the order form you need on the job. Is that something that's going to happen in the next year? I doubt it, right? Because that is a huge task to do that. But if you do that, you can change the way that we bid projects, and it could save a lot of money, right? And that's a rabbit hole, is probably a whole other thing, but that's what I'm fascinated in. But that's kind of like at the end of the rainbow, right? It's like to get there, you have to get through 20 battles and a bunch of crazy things that have to work your way to even be in that game.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of steps you have to do before you get to the point where it can automatically blah, 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 right?
And to be honest with you, I could see us being a very successful company that has these tools that assist the elite salespeople and all these wholesalers in South America and Central America, let's say, and not necessarily be big in the United States. And I say that because the markets down there are very blue ocean compared to here. Like, my business partner her father's in the industry, and his best friend is the president of the Association of Wholesale Construction in Brazil, right? So it's like every single wholesaler is part of this. So you look at that and you're like, we have family connections that they've seen the software work, and they've said, fine tune it, get it in a couple of shops, and we'll put you on the stage in front of all these people. So I talk about coming to America. This could easily end up becoming something that's a non-US company, really.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, and it sounds like they have more. It sounds like the software, like the idea of software, is really not even being used in a lot of places anywhere else. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It sounds like as you get kind of more toward the development world, it's more of a manual process anyway. Would you say, like, you were showing me orders that were handwritten and stuff like that?
And so when I was going through some of my confirmation on, what's the problem we're solving here, and, how much we're helping and that kind of stuff, of course, I met with all the people I've known through the years in the industry, a lot of them contractors and subcontractors. And one or two saw this and, got excited, like when we would talk about what we were doing. And they would say, wow, that's really cool. And this is big. This would be a big thing, save a lot of money. But a lot of them, all they see is it's always been done this way, right? It's that Grace Hopper, Rear Admiral, like the most dangerous phrase in the English language. We've always done it that way, right? It's like, it's kind of that. We've always done it this way. And you can say, well, the way we're doing it doesn't seem to work that great, right? Like every job is ending with change orders and audits and, and money. Where'd the money go and why did this happen? So clearly something's not working. But no one really acknowledges it. Oh, that's just the way it is. If you talk to architects and contractors, and it's interesting, side note, I was introduced to a company in Utah, I believe is where they're based, and they're consultants that are hired by private equity to bring in experts to give them information if private equity is wanting to attack a certain space. Like, hey, we want to buy architecture firms, which is what they're doing, right? We want to buy architecture, construction, engineering, but really architecture. And it's someone must have sent out a memo, because there's a lot of them, right? And I'm pretty regularly meeting with private equity, and they'll pick your brain and ask you about the industry. And the first one I gave them the old school, like I'm an architect that just believes everything's going to be happy forever. And then at some point I'm like, what the hell, man? They're paying me to come in and give them the truth, what I believe. So I'm going to be honest. And then I gave them this message, right? And it's interesting. Every single one had the response of like, wow, okay, like that's not exactly what I expected to hear. Like, I wasn't saying don't buy the companies, but I would be thoughtful of where you're going. And some I thought maybe I was crazy, but I would say those folks definitely heard my message and could see it. And it was something maybe they've already been thinking about, right? Like, where is this going to go? And I always track those money people. It's like, hey, if you're going to ask the people that are in the profession, hey, where do you think this is going? It's like, yeah, it's going to go to the park. It's going to be a wonderful picnic for everybody. But if you ask the people that are tracking the money and they're saying, yeah, we're not sure about this, right? We're looking into it. That feels interesting to me, right? But my point is, when I talk to them, I don't say, oh, it's a great thing for you to get into. I still told some of them, if it was me, I don't think I'd be buying an architecture firm. I have one because I use it to feed my other businesses while they're young. And the second my other businesses are successful, I've told them this. I'm turning this over to my business partner in architecture, and I'm getting out of it.
You're getting out of it, huh? All right. I don't know. I don't know if I would start a computer software consulting company, like just a computer company, but I think there is opportunity in it. And there's certainly opportunity in, I think, building tools and things. Again, a lot of these guys, I feel like, a lot of the AI guys, whether it's Perplexity or, it's Claude or Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini, they're really desperate to prove the valuations that they're getting investment dollars at. Okay. OpenAI has to prove that they're effectively, I think they're going to come out at like $1 trillion. So they got to prove they're $1 trillion company to their investors. And imagine they got to prove to the public that they're going to be worth more than $1 trillion. Right. So that means they have to have that hockey stick growth has to go on for a long time in the future. So to me, they say things that sound like internet companies when I was in 99, 98. And I was on the internet very early, and people were saying things like this. And you saw companies like Webvan that were going to deliver groceries, and you saw companies that were going to deliver, cinder blocks, and they were going to deliver dog food. And the reality is only Amazon was able to get that done at scale. And the only reason they were able to do that is probably because of Prime. But either way, it's still really hard to buy a big bag of 50-pound bag of dog food online. It's generally speaking, you're going to buy that at the grocery store.
Agreed. Because
they're able to absorb the shipping. And so some of the things that people thought were really going to pan out didn't pan out at all.
Agreed.
They didn't work at all, right? And a lot of the things that people said were right around the corner in 2000 and 2001 didn't really even happen until 2015, and the mobile phone. Like that to me really accelerated things. And so, you didn't have that early on. And so the internet was a desktop experience, and you had stuff like Microsoft Word, but you really didn't even have stuff like Google Sheets and stuff like that, or like co-editing, and even some of that's still kind of flaky and feels like a lot of lawyers. I've never gotten a document from a lawyer in Google Docs.
Yeah.
It's in Microsoft Word, right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So like some part of this is sort of anchored in, this is the way we are doing it. Like you said, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And there's, so some of that stuff is, I've used it, and some of it's good. I mean, having an NDA, right? Having, Claude write an NDA, I don't have to pick up the phone and call a lawyer. But the truth is, I wouldn't pick up the phone and call a lawyer to do that anyway. In 2022, I wouldn't have called a lawyer. I would have gone on to LegalZoom and clicked a button and downloaded, or I would have searched for one, online that I could get that somebody shared, right? So I wasn't paying a lawyer to do that stuff anyway. I was downloading and I was like, yeah, that's good enough. And now I have Claude telling me that's good enough. Is that better? Is that right? I don't know. I wasn't doing it before. I was downloading the one off LegalZoom and putting my name in it. So maybe I was trusting their lawyers or their AI or whatever. So again, I don't know that some areas have really changed, but some areas are just missing that wisdom component.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think about what you're doing, right, with DealStar, and it fascinates me. And anytime somebody I know is starting a business, there's people I know that start a business I have no interest in because it's food or something. Like, I don't care about that. Like, the business is fun to watch what they do. And I've been fascinated. And the reason that it fascinates me is because, everyone we are talking about energy a little bit. Like the smartest people, like, we don't have enough of it, right? Started with the IBM COOs, like, hey, everyone's talking about this. We don't have enough energy, right? And then Elon Musk, now Amazon, we're going to put stuff on the, now all that stuff makes sense. To me, it makes sense, right? But it's still a gigantic effort. It's going to take a lot of time. And, it's interesting. If you go to the National Academy of Engineers, I'm fascinated. They do these 10-year, they do these projects. They'll pull like Larry Page and all these smartest engineers in the world from every sector, and they'll put a team together. And they did this challenges for the next generation. It's like the 10 great challenges. And some of it's individualized learning, like how do we teach people, and so simple things, not simple, but ideas simple. And some of it's big, like energy for the future, right? And in that list of 10, I want to say 3 or 4 were energy based, right? And 2 were sun energy, fission, as I always get fission and fusion mixed up. But, so there's this stuff happening with energy. So when in our entire existence have we ever been in a position where we didn't have access to enough energy? It's never happened, right? Like, it was always like we got reserves of oil. The price might go up because of the way we're tracking the economy or geopolitical war, whatever's happening around the world. But there was never a shortage, and if we needed it, we could get it, right? It wasn't like, oh my God, 6 years later, we're all still no heat in our houses, right? It was like we could take care of it. The access to energy was never an issue. Like how much we might pay for it might be an issue, but access to it was never a concern. It's probably more energy than we ever needed, right? It was just like, yeah, we have more than we need. Now we're in a different position, which is if we want to keep evolving as a species and going forward, not just AI that knows how to answer a question about going to the car wash, but can help us, can solve cancer, can whatever, robotics, the things that can actually change the world. It looks to me like we can't do anything until we solve, and the energy is not going to be solar or petroleum products or fossil fuels or whatever. It's going to be a new source of energy that can sustain this type of growth, and that is something we either don't have or we're currently working on. I don't know how that translates to what you're doing with your business, but it's interesting because while the administration changes and things like credits and tax that goes to different for energy use and some of that stuff may change, but ultimately what's going to happen, I think, is the money that gets invested into energy over the next 5 years, I bet you will dwarf everything else because it's going to become clear, like it's not even about AI. Like unless we solve this, we're stuck, right? Like we're going to hit a wall and we're not going to be able to move forward. Many of the technologies that we talk about, not even just AI specific, solving problems, doing jobs for us, will require, Wi-Fi networks and the passing of information and energy that we just don't have right now. So I say that because it's fascinating to me. Like, I'm building a software company or trying to, that's on the end, which is, hey, we need the energy to be able to even advance to the point where I could do the thing that's the big dream. Right? The business you're in is more in the middle of whatever it does of the thing that I believe will be the most important conversation over the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I feel like some part of what you're saying is, I don't want to say kind of not my problem, but we're certainly in the renewable energy incentive space, and so but. Bear in mind, the government has carrots and the government has sticks, right? Yep. And so that sticks would be like tariffs, right? So, the Trump tariffs. Am I for that? Yeah, because that brings manufacturing jobs here and that's working. I've seen it in the solar industry. People, solar companies and energy companies are bringing manufacturing and brick and mortar here.
And I've seen it on the construction side too. So it is agreed.
Yeah. Yep. So that piece is working. That's the stick, right? And then you have the Inflation Reduction Act under Biden, which is carrots, basically. Here's what you got to do to build energy. And I think it takes both of those and a good mix of both of those and a good mix of, industrial policy at the government side, for them to be able to say, okay, look, we're not going to make it too punitive. And on the other side, we're not going to incentivize the wrong behavior, right? So we want to create incentives that are broad and that are easy to take advantage of, that are broad-based. They're not for one company or two company or this guy's family or that or whatever, or this industry. And, we're going to have, like to back up, to give you an example, the issue that a lot of people, data centers have, and the reason that people say data centers are going to make my bills go up and data centers are going to be, are going to cost me more energy because they're competing for the same power and we shouldn't build them and we shouldn't build data centers and all this. The reason that that the data center can't generate its own power is because of rules from the 60s and 50s that said only power companies can generate power. So they created this artificial monopoly where they're the only ones who are cool enough and smart enough and to generate electricity. And so they just put a fence around the market with rules, right? With legislation. Okay. Kind of like the same way, you couldn't sell a Tesla to a buyer. You had to sell it to a dealership and the dealership had to sell it to the buyer. Why? Because that's the rules that they set up back in the 1900s or whatever, right? So does it have to be that way? No, it doesn't have to be that way. A data center can generate their own electricity. They can totally do it if they want to, but they can't. They're forbidden from doing it because of the rules of the power company.
Yeah.
And those rules are basically designed to put money in people's pocket and to control the marketplace. That is it. So they've lessened the rules on homeowners, but it used to be homeowners couldn't, until the 90s, homeowners couldn't tie their solar into the grid. So it's fine if you have a cabin in the woods, But if you're going to touch the grid is really sensitive.
Yeah.
People understand it's electrical engineering. Like, you understand how it works. People have been doing this stuff since, the 1900s. Like, this is not rocket science. You tie it into the grid, like whatever. And so, that they made that process really arduous and difficult until home solar came in. Well, now they're just like saying, look, let us generate our own geothermal energy. We'll drill the $5 or $10 million geothermal plant, and then we'll use it to fund our data center, and we won't use any of your grid electricity. Well, the electricity company doesn't want that.
Yeah.
They don't want that at all. They're like, no, you got to buy electricity from us, and you have to have us make it. And they're like, well, you're not making enough power. You didn't build a brand new power plant. You say it's going to take 5 years. We think we can do it in 5 months. Why should we let you do it?
Yeah.
It's
an
ridiculous.
Interesting dilemma, because a lot of the access to energy of the future, right, like that people talk about, can translate, at least mentally, when you project out 5, 10, 20 years or whatever it is, that those types of sources of energy are not things that require giant plants and systems that take up whole cities. You know what I mean? Of infrastructure.
Right.
So that's and I don't want to get into conspiracy theory stuff, but it's a giant industry providing energy to people, right?
Well, and look, it's not a conspiracy for them to want to, it's not a conspiracy for these guys to want to defend their industry, right? And defend their income stream, right? But
it's still messed up.
They're all working together, and yes, they're all moving in the same direction because they all have the same incentive structure, right? So, but that's not necessarily nefarious. That's probably pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, one of the issues, like with solar, is solar plus battery, again, not just straight solar, which the sun only shines certain hours of the day, but again, you store it with a battery, and batteries have gotten really cheap. Battery costs have gone down 75 or 85% in the last 2 years. So batteries are really cheap. And so what we see is that something like 80% of the cost of energy is actually not the cost to make it, to generate it. It's actually the cost to ship it to your house.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that energy, you probably know this as an engineer, that energy is lost in terms of heat.
Agreed.
Right? Over the distance that it's being, stepped up and stepped down in terms of voltage. Agreed. And, again, resistance and all that, right? So it is a lot cheaper to generate the electricity closer to the use, right? The cheapest electricity is on your roof, right?
Agreed. I mean, we spend an enormous amount of money on the infrastructure to deliver energy. And so then cities realize, like, hey, we need to get rid of these telephone poles and all these lines. It's a nightmare. Not only is it maintenance issues, it looks like crap. Let's get rid of it. So when you do a new project, a commercial project, residential is a little different. In Austin, for example, Leander, a lot of them are going to it. They say when you do your project, you don't have a choice. You need to take the power from whatever pole or wherever it's coming from and go underground. And any poles across the front of your property, underground, right? And the idea is eventually, after 20 years of everybody doing projects, it'll get to the point where there's maybe 2% of the poles are left, then the city will pass a bond and go and bury that stuff. But the thing that's interesting is, like, we're just doing the same thing a second time. It's like, let's put the poles up. Oh, they're ugly, they suck. Let's spend money again and put them underground, which is actually more expensive than above the ground. And so, it's like, okay, here we are again. We're going to spend a fortune. And you could say, well, that's private. We're pushing it onto private. Well, it's still money that's being used in infrastructure that's probably a 10, 15-year thing before we really maybe don't use that anymore. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, we'll see, but it's interesting to me. I mean, I see these shows, everybody freaks out, the stuff with the UAPs or the UFOs, right? And oh my God, there's aliens. That's cool. That's a whole other conversation. The part that I love when they talk about it is there was one of the pilots or one of the admirals who was a science guy. And he said, they're talking about this one that they watched go up and down in the atmosphere like 6 times, right? And it would go from the ocean and they have it on radar and everything up to the upper atmosphere. It would take like 6 seconds, right? Just did that over and over again. And the guy said every one of those trips, like, they calculated its energy use, what it would take to do that. And it was the entire output of electricity in the United States for a week. For one of those trips. And the guy said it just did it over and over again all day long, like it wasn't even affected. And so when people talk about aliens, I look at that and I say, oh my God, like, if that's true, that means that that's an energy source that solves every problem that we have, right? So, but it's an interesting thing where that stuff goes. I don't know.
Isn't that what it is? Isn't that what they said it is? It's an antimatter reactor.
Yeah, that's what I mean. People say it's anti-gravity and, it's who knows? I mean, now more and more of this stuff is becoming the crazy people of 20 years ago that when they started talking, you were like, oh boy, we need to get out of this room. Like, now they're the ones that are right? All the crazy stuff in the world, like, man, they were right? But I don't know how true any of that stuff is, but my point is if we believe it even a little bit based on the people who are talking about it, it means that inside of these things is an energy source that makes what we use look like wood.
Maybe. Yeah. You may very well be right. You may very well be right. Or we can't do it economically like fusion. We can't figure it out. Yeah. Which, again.
So I'll track your business with great enthusiasm, because hopefully, as you can see, this energy thing to me is something that's very fascinating and I'm very passionate about. And I hope my lifetime that we'll see a breakthrough that changes this stuff, because it's probably at the core of every bad thing that happens on the planet is a war over energy, really, usually.
Yeah, true. Resources limited resources, right?
Yep.
So yeah, agreed. Okay, man, it's really great to catch up with you. I love what you're doing.
Yeah,
I love the idea of it, and using it in the building space and in construction space. I think that's awesome. There's certainly a lot of inefficiency in that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, let me know. I'd mentioned to you that my friend Daniel that started that company Dwell CI, and I've met other people along the way. My friend Tosin, that I tried to do a connection with you, and she's in the energy space. And I might, if you're looking for more people to chat with, folks like that, I think would be great. Just because Daniel is in my space, kind of in the AEC space, but he's more on the design side, and Tosin, of course, is in your space in energy.
There's lots of grit.
It's because Andy and I can throw a little bit of the crazy in there, like the aliens and stuff.
I like that. No, I don't want YouTube to figure that out. Like they already got me on a list, Scott. I got to be honest.
That's my favorite thing I heard about all of this. When I heard that, and an admiral says this, he was like the lead of their, like the Marine something science for the U.S. Navy. And when he said that, I'm like, okay, I guess I got to believe this guy. If that's true, that's unbelievable to consider. Like we're over here hitting each other with sticks and trying to start fires, basically, and we're surrounded by something that opens the gate to everything. I mean, and to me, it's not like, oh my God, dude, if we can do this, we can have robots that can operate on people. That's not what I care about. What I care about is desalination in places that can't get water. We don't do it because it's too energy intensive. We can do it with nuclear reactors on our aircraft carriers and subs, but it's too expensive, right? Like areas that can't grow their own food, can't have irrigation. It's like suddenly many of these problems that we say we can't fix this problem because it's too energy intensive and will cost way more money than it will get in return to fix it. Suddenly all that stuff becomes open to solutions.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
All right, man, I'm not going to chew you up all day. I would if I could, I would.
Yeah, no, we could certainly go on and on and on. It's been great. I really appreciate your time. And let's follow up. I'll have Jennifer follow up on those other people that you think would be great to have on here. We can certainly go around the horn with them. But yeah, man, great. Great talking to you, man. We'll see you around the lounge and all that.
Yeah. I'll be coming back there a little more often. I've been buried the last 3 weeks, but I'm lightening up a little bit. So I'll see you there.
That's great news. Me too. It's going to be really rough for me as we're getting to tax season and all that stuff.
Oh, so. Yeah, that too. Yeah, I don't even like to think about that.
Yeah. I got to write that check.
Yeah.
Cool. But got to get a tax credit, man. Oh, wait, maybe you don't qualify. Maybe you don't.
Well, we can. When I worked for the bigger firm, we would get energy credits and tax credits for any schools. If we did geothermal or any public buildings, and we would get a lot.
Light tech and all that. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
I could probably hunt that stuff down. We've done off the grid homes and stuff like that you can, and that's a whole other thing when you talk about the energy. It's amazing when people try to build things that are off the grid, what you run into with the government, right? It's kind of like, dude, I own a 1,000-acre ranch out in the middle of nowhere. I want to build a house in the middle of it and have rainwater collection and solar, and they'll try to stop you from doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding.
Trying to hold the people down, man.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool, man. Great talking to you. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you.
Take care. All right, bye.